Well, there it is.
All right. My name's Glenn M. or Bhagavandas. Um,
So, Bhagavandas, I heard that today from one of the Vedanta members,
mhm.
and that's pretty interesting. Um, First of all, do you want to go by Glenn or Bhagavandas?
It doesn't matter.
Okay,
Um, I guess it depends on your audience. If it's an AA audience, be Glenn M. And if it's a Vedanta audience, it could be Bhagavandas.
all right.
It's all okay. That's why I
Well,
said
well,
both.
I guess first of all, welcome to you. This is Seek the Source, and we're recording spiritual stories, and I've asked you to do it, and you've agreed to tell us yours. So the show's all yours. I welcome to hear it. I'm looking forward to it. Maybe you can start with where you grew up and where you're from and how you got here, and a little bit of the basics, and then we'll look forward to it.
All right. Um, I was born in Shreveport, Louisiana. My parents were actually living in Atlanta with my dad's parents, but it was kind of, in the 60s, uh, you know, when a girl got knocked up, they, had the shotgun wedding more or less back in those days here in
Okay.
the South. And so they basically ran away to get away from his parents, and they ended up in Shreveport, and that's where I was born. And when I was 2 weeks old, my mom flew back here with my grandmother, and they went back to living with my dad's parents. And so I grew up in Atlanta. And
Right.
from my earliest childhood, my family was quite um, dysfunctional. Um, my father basically would retaliate against my mother if she showed me any type of affection. So it was generally, she just didn't. And so um also, when I finally went to school, I was very dyslexic. It hadn't been diagnosed at that point. And so, they thought that I had something wrong with me as far as, I couldn't really write or read. And, they'd make me separate me from the class and make me, make letters out of Play-Doh and all that. And, thinking that I didn't know what the letters were. Anyway, so that, wasn't a very pleasant experience. And my first grade teacher, she used to pick us up out of our desk by our hair and hit us with books and rulers and things like that. And so anyway, um, that got found out by my parents, and the school wouldn't do anything about the teacher. But anyway, I got sent to counseling, and it became, apparent pretty quick that I'd been abused, in my home
Yeah.
life. And so, we fast forward to age 12, and, neither one of my parents drank. I've never seen them drink or use drugs recreationally to this day. And but there was these two young girls in the neighborhood, and I was 12. I think, they were maybe 13, and they already had a questionable reputation at that age. And
Oh,
it was Christmas break. I think I was in sixth grade, and being the young lad that I was eager to find out why they had such a questionable reputation.
well, sure.
So I went up to their house one day. My folks were gone. It was during the day, and their folks were gone. And, I was sitting there, and she asked me, did I want a martini? And I'm like, okay, I guess,
So
never,
you're 12?
yeah, never drank before in my life, didn't come from a home that drank. And so I drank the martini, and, went down pretty good. And so she made a whole picture of them. That was the one and only time in my entire life I've ever drank a martini. And I we drank all that. And then she had a bottle of Southern Comfort. I guess her father drank and she was raiding his bar. And, and all of a sudden, I'm a ladies' man, I'm smooth I never, it was kind of like the aha moment where like, this is what I've been missing in
So
life.
it worked for you.
What's that?
It worked for you.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, most people I know remember that moment in their
Right.
life when the light bulb came on. And
Yeah.
so, as things would have it, uh, they lived in my neighborhood up on the front row or the main street of the neighborhood. So I didn't quite exactly make it home. I blacked out and passed out in the middle of the street. And I guess I was trying to pee and was too drunk to do my pants back right. So I'm passed out in a puddle of puke in the middle of the street in the front of the neighborhood. And of course, the cops came and had to scoop me up. And everybody, drove by and saw, and the whole neighborhood, all the kids at school, everything. And so I went, they took me home and I'm, still kind of out of it on the couch. And, the folks came home and that didn't go over real well. And it was a very embarrassing, painful experience.
I'm
Because
sure.
when I got on the school bus, to go to school, of course, all the kids on the school bus knew, and so I swore to myself I'd never do that again. And it wasn't about 10 days later, I did it again
Yeah.
and again and again and again and again and again for the next 30 years. That became the pattern of my life. I
Yeah.
immediately, uh, there wasn't any ramp up. First time I drank, I had a high tolerance, blacked out. And, I always drank to get drunk from the very first time. And,
Sure.
you know, the being, from a a broken childhood or family, you might say, 12 years old and dyslexic, school not going very well for me. It just kind of set the stage. And, the alcohol got a hold of me, from the very get go. And of course, as I got older, I got in more trouble. When I was either 16 or 17, out drinking with my friend, and the stores closed. We couldn't buy any alcohol, but back then you could give somebody $10 or something to go in the store and they would buy you beer or something as long as you looked like, you weren't a toddler or something.
Yeah.
Back then the age was only 18, so it still, wasn't that big of a thing. So we could usually get somebody to buy it for us, but the stores were closed. It was past 11:45 here where they quit selling. And so we got the bright idea that, we were going to bust the glass out of the Magic Market store and steal all the beer.
Okay.
So I did. And eventually I ended up getting caught doing that
Yeah.
kind of things. And I was either 16 or 17 and got charged with 2 burglaries. And when I was 18, they sentenced me as an adult. And when I was 18, they just pulled me out of school and sent me to prison, and
Wow.
never finished high school because I was in a prison that it was fairly high security. I wasn't allowed outside the dorm without an armed guard. Basically, I ended up on the chain gang down in South Georgia at 18. And
Wow.
I got 5 year sentence on the burglaries where we stole the beer. And, and so I got out, and then I got a DUI while I was on parole there. And so they sent me to Alto um, back in the
So
day.
where is that now?
Well, Alto is, I think they closed it back then due to the fact that so many of the inmates were dying, and the press got a hold of it and they closed it. And now it's a women's prison, but it's up in North Georgia, I
I
think
see.
close to Rome, Georgia.
All right.
But anyway, that was, back in the 80s. So
I
it
see.
was still a men's 18 to 24-year-old prison back then, but for males only. but they did have 11 miners, and one of them got killed, and that got the press onto them. But anyway, so it ended up closing. The But it just kind of set the pattern for the next 30 years. And I got DUI after DUI, and couldn't stay out of jail. And
Yeah.
over the course of those different DUIs and getting locked up for all kind of various things, all of it was alcohol related, because like the big book says, we were seldomly mildly intoxicated. And so
Right.
when you're seldomly mildly intoxicated in public, you have a way of getting arrested. So the but anyway, so I kept getting in trouble, kept getting locked up, and of course I was court ordered many a time to go to AA.
Right.
I detested it, hated it, uh, really had no concept of getting sober, didn't want to get sober, and really it never dawned on me that alcohol was a problem. It was everybody else and the police and no, that was the problem.
Well, it's
But
their fault.
I eventually I got married. I fought competitively for a while,
You
and
did what competitively?
fought like martial arts
Oh, I
competitively
see.
for a while
Yeah.
in my 20s. And when I was 30, I got tired of uh, trying not to drink, not to be hungover, to do that. And I got tired of always having to be somewhere because of that.
Yeah.
And I just hung it up and started, I was already drinking a lot, but then, I didn't have that impeding my drinking. And I went to Beijing and met a girl that in Beijing, and eventually we came back to the States, got married, and that really didn't last that long because I was a practicing alcoholic, and we got divorced. And the next 10 years I kind of really went off the deep end. Being a convicted felon, I was also growing marijuana as a means of financial support. And at one point, I decided to not be dependent upon that. And I tried to actually get a job. And with my criminal record, it was just impossible, even back then. And so I just said, if the world wants me to be a criminal, then I'm going to be the best criminal I can be. And so I was basically obsessed with drag racing. And with drag racing, there's a saying that there's no substitute for cubic inches and there's no substitute for cubic dollars. And
Yeah.
so I decided to ramp up my dollars. And so I ramped up my marijuana growing operation, and it got bigger and bigger. And I drank more and more. I didn't punch a clock. I would, you know, do the labor involved in that. And, and then I would have 4 or 5 stops that I'd do in the morning where I would take, stuff to people. And of course, they all wanted to drink and smoke at every stop. And I would do that, and I would come home and I would try to limit my drinking until I got home so I wouldn't be, you know, too drunk, get pulled over during that process. That's why I tried to do it all in the morning.
Yeah.
And and it basically I ended up to where, every day I would drink and pass out. Time didn't mean anything. It was night or day. It was just a cycle of drink and then, pass out, wake up and, drink again. And, I'd live like that for a good solid 10 years. And I used to tell myself like, man, freaking dying here. I'm thinking I'm gonna take a break. And I would get up in the morning and I would hit the shower and I'd be like, ugh, I think, well, maybe just one or two just to get the ick off. you know, and then, first thing I noticed the next day I did it again. And that
Yeah.
just happened and happened and happened until one day I just finally said, well, I mean, why am I even kidding myself? I'm never going to stop. And I just gave up. It's kind of like, where some people choose to take it to the end. It's, I knew that wasn't any point in pretending like I was going to give it a break. And
Yeah.
so I just surrendered to the fact that, I get up every morning, I look in the fridge, drink whatever's left over, wait for the store to open to start selling more. And, by the last 2 years, by that time I was divorced and long since divorced, my racing, I was making tons of money and I was just buying parts and, to build cars. And I wasn't even put them together. I was just too drunk to even build them really. And, you know, I, I just couldn't stop drinking long enough to even do that. And, so as fate would have it, uh, I got a little knock on the door one day, and and I didn't have any front windows, and in come a bunch of undercovers and got busted. They arrested me for trafficking and commission of a felony with a firearm.
Wow.
And so when I got out of jail, you know, I was just thinking, like something has to be wrong with me. You know, I must be mentally ill or something, because I literally had come to the realization that I could just dial people. You ever heard of a phone book Congress where you could dial people at random out of the phone book and get better results than Congress is capable of coming up
Yeah.
with?
Yeah.
Well, I was like the same way. I was like, I literally need somebody to tell me how to run my life because I can't do it. I'm incapable of doing it. So I'm like, something's got to be wrong with me. And so I actually went to a doctor and I said, told him, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I'm incapable of running my life. I think I need some kind of mental help or something. And, he suggested that I go to AA. And I was like, what? That's not the kind of help I was looking for. But anyway, so having got arrested and all again, and I was 42 at the time, and I was already been convicted at least twice on felonies, so it's possible they could have tried me for a three-time loser and life
Yeah.
sentence. Um, the so during the time period of waiting to go to court and all, um, I was trying to, buy favor with the judge, how you go to rehab and treatment and meetings and get your papers signed and all before you go to court.
Sure.
So I went to GRN and it was an 18-week class where I had to go, I don't know, I think 3 nights a week. It was like 3 or 4 hours long.
Yeah.
And we had to go to 2 meetings and get our papers signed every week, 2 meetings a week. And of course, it was like week 18, and I hadn't done a single meeting.
Oh
So,
no.
so I'm like, I got to do 36 meetings in a week. And a friend of mine, his wife had been in AA for about 2 years or so, and she kept trying to get me to come to a meeting, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. So finally, I kind of had to. And I asked
Yeah.
her, "Well, can I go to a meeting if I'm still drinking?" And she goes, "Well, yeah, as long as you don't, cause any trouble or anything." And so I went to the old Bold Springs meeting. I don't know if you know where that is. That particular meeting doesn't exist anymore, but it's a little church, and I pulled into the parking lot, and I think I had like three tall boy Bud Ices, and I slammed them down just to be able to go into the meeting. And I was just remember walking down behind the stairs to the little church down there to where the room was. And I was just literally like, screw me, you know, this is just it. My life has come to this. I detested AA, and here I am walking into a freaking AA meeting. And I could see that the wreckage was piled up around me. I mean, that was clear.
Sure.
And so I'm going down the steps to the meeting, and they're having an eating meeting. And so, the people are all in there, and I'm standing outside. I don't even want to go in there's a lot of people in there, and I'm looking, and it was just like a scene out of was it a Christmas Carol or a Christmas Story? I'm like the Scrooge, outside, and everybody. It's like everybody is inside having fun around the fire, and the hams and turkey and all, and I'm
Yeah.
out there in the cold, all lonely and cold, and this was literally the way it felt. And I'm just looking at these people, and they're all happy, as the book would describe it, happy, joyous, and free. And I kept kicking myself. I would sit in my house and look down my 45 and just think, what am I waiting on? You know, why haven't I just hurry up and cut my losses? And I'm standing out there and I'm looking in, and I don't know, something in me, I decided that if I'm going to keep living, I have to have whatever they have, you know. And so I
So
walked in.
you wanted what they have.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, these people obviously looked like their lives were going far better than mine was. And so I'm like, if I'm not going to shoot myself and I'm going to keep living, then I got to have that.
yeah.
So I decided when I walked in, I don't care what it is, I'm going to do whatever they say do. And I did. And I guess I was they call a one chip wonder. It's the only white
Wow.
chip I've ever picked up. Um, but during that time period of those years, I, experimented heavily with psychedelics, and I had already kind of dabbled in Buddhism a little bit. But, you know, by the, so I walked in, and, sometimes I say God does for you what you can't do for yourself. So a grand sponsor, a sponsor, and a sponsee all in a line,
Yeah.
they kind of mugged me and more or less assigned me a sponsor that night, which is kind of unusual. So, um, you know, and so the guy, I didn't know it at the time, but I was his first sponsee, and, it was his sponsor and grand sponsor there with him. And, you know, and after the meeting was over and all that, they say, I don't really remember it. They say I was shaking like a leaf and, coming unglued. But
Sure.
so after the meeting, we're in the behind the church there in the parking lot, and he's telling me to go home and give him a call like tonight or tomorrow. And so I get in my car, and I could just tell, um if I didn't call him then, I was never going to call him. And that phone was
Yeah.
just getting heavier and heavier. And I called him, and my grand sponsors named Mark and Andy, and I could hear Andy going, "God damn, he's already calling you, Andy, about the parking lot." But I had to, because I knew in that moment if I didn't, it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
And I just felt the weight of the moment, and it was now or never. And I called him. I didn't even get out of the parking lot. And so whatever he told me to do, read this, call me, be at this meeting tonight, be here, and he played all the old sponsor tricks on me too. But
Yeah.
I did what he said, and
So what was the date?
oh, it was 8/6/11.
Okay.
So
So
that was,
August 6th of 2011.
yep.
Very good.
So anyway, so um, you know, I just, whatever they told me to do, I did. Of course, I was very fortunate in the fact that I'd been in AA and had a good sponsorship family. Like I could be in my home group and sometimes have 5 generations of my sponsor
Sure.
family tree in the same meeting.
Right.
And so, um, so I was lucky to have about I don't remember, it was between 6 and 8 months I was in AA before I went to court. And
Yeah.
uh, the week before, I went into a kind of like a semi halfway house type place. Uh, and, the director kind of was trying to petition the judge for me to be able to stay there. And the judge basically said, there's no way I'm walking out of the courtroom. It ain't happening.
Yeah.
And, but my grand sponsor told me, he's like, if God wants you to, you know, if he doesn't want that to happen, not even the judge can say no.
That's right.
I'm like, okay, whatever. But, you know, so anyway, I didn't end up going to prison again because I was really, I mean, I could hack it in my 20s, but at 42, I don't know, you know.
Yeah.
But so anyway, I was court ordered to the halfway house. I was there for 26 months. And fortunately, I had a good AA sponsorship, family tree, because you're not going into a more sane place. You're going into a hyper insanity when you get put into a place like that, because we lived like 5 and 6 guys in 2 bedrooms in little townhouses, with like maybe 40 people that were
Oh,
all fresh off the street and still twitching, and so it just multiplied the insanity. It didn't make it less. And
yeah,
so I survived 26 months of that without getting locked up, having to pay for it. Of course, my house was in foreclosure because I lost my means of income, and
sure.
the wife was long gone, and I was having to pay to live in the halfway house.
Yeah,
And so, but my grand sponsor told me, he said, I've never seen anybody come in here and work this program and fall through the cracks.
that's
And
true.
and sometimes he said, even if you don't believe, just believe that we believe.
Yeah.
And I really had a lot of problems with the God concept in my early days. And so they told me, well, if you can't do the God thing, then just use the group or group of drunks as good orderly direction. And so that's what I did. And
Yeah.
when he told me that I've never seen anybody come in and do it and fall through the cracks, sometimes that was the only thing that I had to hold on to.
I'm going to interrupt you right there. For me, that's step two.
Hmm.
That's my favorite step.
Yeah, mine too. I'm
And,
a two-step thumper.
well, I don't know about that, but it's because it that we all can agree that something other than me can help.
A
And
power greater than
whatever you put
myself.
that, pardon me?
A power greater than myself.
Yeah, yeah,
And two, it implies that you have to realize that you're not entirely sane, that you need to be restored to sanity by
yes.
that power greater than yourself.
Anyway, continue. I didn't mean to
But
interrupt,
yeah,
but
but
I just
anyway,
love that
so
step.
so I held on to the fact that, he said that I've never seen anybody come in here and do it and fall through the cracks. And I had plenty of opportunities to fall through the cracks. The PO, the probation officer and all them, they kept trying to send me in front of the judge to get resentenced because they gave me $175,000 fine, which I had no way of paying.
Yeah.
And so just I got lucky, the not lucky, but because these things aren't coincidences, but it just so happens that the lady that was uh, in charge of sending me in front of the judge, because of my I have what they call dish syndrome. It's a skeletal disease, joint disease. She was
Oh,
asking me, why am I not on narcotic or opioid painkillers? And I just told the lady, because I'm an alcoholic, so I don't take opioid painkillers. And it turns out she was a long time in the program too. And she talked to me and saw that I was, legit, and said, as long as I'm here, you never have to worry about going in front of the judge. And
huh.
so, you know, God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself.
That's right.
And so eventually, I got through the 10 years. I'd been in the program 11 years by the time I was finally off of paper. So,
Oh, wow.
but um, but during the time period, uh, I literally not early on, but I literally had, what you would call a white light experience. Um, you know, the unknowingly, I'd been I spent a summer at a monastery here near my house. They're all from Laos. It's a Theravadan monastery, and was kind of studying Buddhism in a kind of an informal way. and that kind of branched out into to Tibetan Buddhism. And
All right.
so back here a long time ago, His Eminence Galatolku was in at residence at I think you pronounce it Drepung Losling Monastery. It's a Tibetan monastery here in Atlanta. And one day he just told me he wanted me to come see him, and I was fascinated by the fact that, that he was a Rinpoche, which means that, he was identified as having a former incarnation, that they knew who he was. And so, um, I just wanted to ask him, could he remember anything about his past lives, or did he think that was real? I just wanted to ask him stuff like that. But anyway,
Right.
he told me, he said, set an appointment for me to come to his office. And I'm like, okay. And, I went there, and I did not realize it at the time, but he initiated me, gave me a mantra. I knew he gave me a mantra, but he never at any point said, I'm initiating you. He asked me to explain the Four Noble Truths to him, and then he made some comments about myself. And, and he commented that, oh yeah, it's good, strong, he was commenting on the fact that I didn't really have any impedance to the belief or the faith necessary. And so he gave me a mantra, and he gave me his contact information, and I guess you would call some precepts on some printouts. And so I did the mantra a little bit in the beginning, but not much. And I really didn't keep in contact with him. I still continued to study Buddhism and things. And I don't know, one day I just, you know, I heard, I don't know if you know who Terrence McKenna is, but I was listening to a talk by him, and he was saying, if you live your life as a quest, you'll find what you're looking for. And I started thinking about that. And I'm like, what is the point of all this? And so I just kind of decided to, go on a quest to find out, what is this God thing, and why, what is the point of all this?
So, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Where is this Buddhist monastery that you went to here?
It's Dresden, I think. It's on Dresden.
Yeah, I know exactly where it is.
Yeah, but
I've been
since
to it.
COVID, I don't know. I've tried to go down there a time or two. I don't know about now, but it's like all the monks were gone from there, and they don't answer the phone or anything. I don't know about now, but um, I didn't really go back after, for a while. And and Galatolku, His Eminence, is now in a monastery in Texas, so he's no longer here in Atlanta. But but basically, for whatever reason, I decided that I was going to make karmic peace with all beings. As weird as that sounds.
Not at
And,
all.
I had gone through a phase of where I was doing a lot of ayahuasca, and, it seemed like I had some type of residual from that. Because since that time, where I did it for a whole summer, like 3 and 4 nights in a row for an entire spring and summer, um I would have, like, I had to even be careful while I was driving, because I would go into a static moods. I could feel it coming up, and if it would go all the way to the top, I'd be gone, or I would be in, like, I guess what they literally call like a cosmic orgasm, what I think, what some people call it. But um I don't really know much about that kind of thing. But from what I understand, it's like if the Kundalini reaches all the way to the sixth and seventh chakra, you go into these states. But anyway, so I kind of still, that in a way that window was still open. And, so it wasn't that hard for me to go into elevated states. And so one night I just decided that I'm going to listen to this speaker, and he was talking, and I guess it gave me the idea. And I decided that I was going to make karmic peace with all beings. Had no way of knowing how to do it, but I just meditated on it, literally had like what you would call like a white light type experience. Um, and, I literally saw myself as, I guess you would say, the Buddha, or, and I could see all the other perspectives of all other beings simultaneously.
Yep.
And, I was just like this pillar of light, and I was aware of all consciousness and all, I guess you would call all the consciousness of all the jivas all at once. And, it literally changed my life after having that experience.
How long
And
did it last?
oh, I would just have to estimate, but usually, like when I would be gone and I would look at the clock, it would be 2 to 3 hours that I would of time, that the duration
Yeah.
that would seem like it would be. And the but now, it can just be almost instantaneous. I can be in and out, or have just like flashes of,
Yeah.
to where it doesn't really take that long, and it may or may not happen. But the so you know fast forward, and I was watching YouTube, and I'd seen uh Ananda Mai Mai, or and I her picture just came up one day out of the blue, and it was just something strange about her picture, and I kept looking at it, and it was literally like it was like trying to transport me into some higher realm or something. And I'm just like, I just kept looking at it because like this is weird. And I just kept staring at it, and I knew there was something significant about the picture. And so I started looking into like, well, who is this? And started finding out, and and then that led to finding out about Neeb Karoli Baba, which then I started reading books and listening to Ram Dass talks. And
Right.
one thing eventually led to another, and I discovered Swami Sarvapriyananda.
Yes.
And so one night and I'd seen pictures of Ramakrishna maybe once or twice on the internet, and I don't know what it was, but there was something about him that I was, you don't know why it's significant, but you just have a feeling that it was. And so I'd started seeing some videos of Swami Sarvapriyananda, and he was giving the talk about how the elephant goes through the market grabbing the fruit and
Yeah.
everything, and how they put a stick or something in his trunk for him to carry, so to keep him from the mind from going
Yeah.
out and grabbing everything. And I'm like, yeah, and then he started talking, giving the talk about how, like to dig one well and keep digging instead of, jumping
Right.
from thing to thing, which that's what I'd been doing on the spiritual path, jumping from one kind of Buddhism to this, to that, to shamanism, to, jumping all around. And, I know that he, wasn't literally talking to me, but, the guru was. But,
Yeah.
but I was sitting there watching this talk, and I'm sitting there thinking he's either talking to me or about me, like literally. And, and what he was saying was resonating with me. And so I decided, well, I should go see that guy. And so, but he's in New York, and I'm like, well, I don't know if that's going to happen. And so I said, well, let me just see, like, how far is the closest, one of these Vedanta places? Let me just see. Turns out there was one, in the same city I lived in. And
Yep.
so I called up and got brother on the phone.
Yeah.
And brother gave me an appointment to come see him in a few days. And so I showed up, and I met brother for the first time. And, he was the first person that I've told a lot of these experiences to, a lot more than what I've told you here. And he was the first person that ever acted like I wasn't crazy, and he knew exactly what I was describing to him.
Yeah.
And I could just feel the depth of his devotion. And I was like, I've never in my life to this point, I don't think I've ever encountered a person like this. And so from that point on, I started attending the classes, and actually, I don't know, it might have been brother's advice, but I started saying a guru mantra to
Okay.
bring the guru basically.
Yeah.
And so I was doing also the mantra that His Eminence gave to me. And so it was really just a matter of a short time that brothers like, well, you should get initiated.
Yeah.
And it was only a few months from the time I first met brother till I got initiated by Sarvadevananda. And
Was that here in Atlanta?
that was here in Atlanta.
And how long ago
And
was that?
that was not this past May, but the May 15th before that.
I see.
So this May would be 2 years.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so when he initiated me, it was, I experienced some quite significant things at that time, and basically told me not to talk about it. So I really can't go into it. Um,
Understand.
and so, but it was significant. And anytime I have any doubt, I think about that, and then I'm like, there's no doubt.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so you know, um, so it's been a real process. I'm actually astonished at how quick, once I got initiated, that things, my understanding advanced. I really,
Sure.
at that time, Ramakrishna was kind of like a foreign concept. And it's like I've seen the pictures of the guy, and, I read the materials that Swami told me to read before I got initiated.
Right.
And, I did the japa, and it was just an image on a picture and a concept. But as I kept doing it, then I literally, experienced, the actual presence. The actual, it's kind of like the image came to life, literally.
Sure.
And then, I discovered Mother, and now, it's kind of like, the story of the sadhu who takes over the house, or the camel sticking his nose under the tent, and then Mother, just took over. So to the point to where I was kind of feeling guilty about, I feel like I'm, because when I got initiated, my my ideal that I'm supposed to do my mantra and all is for Ramakrishna. And so
Right.
I was kind of feeling bad, like I'm neglecting Ramakrishna, and so because all I can do is think of Mother, and
Well, isn't it? I mean, your concept
mm,
is okay.
yeah.
All right.
So I solved that. I understand they're one and the same, but I solved that so now I think of myself as Ramakrishna meditating, or, in the first person when he placed uh, the Holy Mother on the shrine and worshiped her on the shrine. And so I literally think of myself like that in the first person as
Oh,
Ramakrishna worshiping the Holy Mother. And so, that kind of resolved all
yeah.
the issue.
Conflict.
Yeah, the conflict. And so, you know, um, the my understanding advances quite a lot. Uh, Sarvadeva told me that, if you want to go fast, then pray to Mother, tell her to remove the obstacles, and tell her you want to go fast. And so I did. And then sometimes it gets too intense to where I'm like, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
slow down now.
Yeah.
But but basically that's how I came to be here. And that understanding, and that might not be for everybody, but that's just how it happened for me.
Well, that was absolutely fantastic. I
Thank you.
do appreciate you being willing to do it. And I was going to interject something
Yeah,
earlier
sure.
when you were talking about the Tibetan Buddhists.
Hmm.
And um, So have you ever heard of David Hawkins, MD, PhD?
Name's familiar.
So
I'm
it's
trying to think.
David R. Hawkins, MD, PhD. He wrote books like Letting Go was his last book. He wrote
Mhm.
Power versus Force, Transcending the Levels of
Yeah,
Consciousness.
I know I haven't read any of those.
Anyway, I was studying David Hawkins, and somebody came in the group and said, "Hey, we're going to go see." They were called the Buddha relics,
Mm,
and they were from Tibet, the Tibetan Buddhists. And so essentially, it was explained to me that the when a monk from that tradition passes away, if they're enlightened, when they burn or cremate their bodies, they will leave
they'll
a
leave a relic.
pearl or a relic in the
Uh-huh.
ashes. So all these relics had been collected throughout history, and it was put in an exhibit, and it was touring the world.
Uh-huh.
And it was in Asheville, North Carolina. I don't know, many years ago when this happened to me. And so we all decided to go. We booked, hotel rooms, went up for the weekend. And when I was there, of course, I have pictures from all this, but um, very peaceful, meditating, and there were Buddhist monks there, Rinpoches,
Hmm.
yeah, reincarnated. And uh, you could get a blessing from one of the monks. And so I got in line. I need all the blessings I can get. And you kneel before him, and he takes some of the relics, puts them on the top of your head, and then he gives you a blessing. Well, it's my turn. I get the blessing, and that energy shot straight into my heart chakra. Now I'm on my knees. I couldn't
Hmm.
get up. I was out. And from that moment on, it rocketed me, and still to this day, into a Kundalini awakening.
Mm.
And it's still here now.
I know that, after I got initiated and I sat back down, I could literally feel things. I could feel it moving around in my
Yeah.
chest for a good while. And, you know, and it's like, so now anytime I think about it, or anything, I feel it come straight up my arms and my hair standing on it. It feels like a beam coming out the top of my head, you
Yeah.
know. So,
Well,
you know,
mine has concentrated right here.
yeah,
It's
mine gets
always
right
there.
here to where it actually kind of hurts.
Yeah.
Like it feels like somebody's giving you a frogger on your forehead.
No, it's more for me, more like intense electricity.
Mm. Now I've had it felt like where it literally shocked me before.
Yeah. Well, on the I mean, when I was at the hotel room and that night, I was sitting on the end of the bed, and a bolt of it shot right out my left arm and made
Mm.
my arm go, straight out. And
Uh-huh.
but I've had all kinds of electronic malfunction. I mean, from that day forward, my entire life changed.
Hmm.
And I literally was not able to probably function
Mm.
for 3 years.
I mean,
So,
I can believe it because I know, you know, when I took initiation, I literally felt it go in me. And,
yeah.
so like I say, anytime I doubt anything, I just think back to that and I'm like, that's it. And, I
Well,
knew.
Vedanta, uh, that's how I found Vedanta. I kept going into bliss,
Hmm.
and I couldn't. I worked, but it was hard. It was very difficult. And I'm educated. I'm all of that. I've and I couldn't understand when I pulled out of my driveway. I couldn't figure out how to get to work.
Yeah, like I say, there for a
That kind
while,
of
I
thing.
really had to be careful driving because I could
Yeah.
go, I could leave, or be
And
like incapacitated by the
so that's when I
ecstasy.
talked to. I was listening to Swami Sarva Priyananda online,
Mhm.
And I thought, well, if anyone would know what this is and how to handle it, he would. So
Mhm.
I called New York Center and they referred me to Atlanta Center. And then I met Shankara, kind of the
Mhm.
similar story. And yeah, he understood what Kundalini was, but he'd never experienced it.
Ah.
And but anyway, I did all of that and I went through the initiation and all that, but the monks there have taught me how to work with that. And I've been since my beginning with uh Vedanta, I've gotten just tremendously so much better.
Mm.
It's sort of like I can be in both places.
Yeah. Well, I don't really have any training as far as how to handle it, but I definitely know that I'm in both places at the same time.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm literally, and I don't usually say this because people disbelieve it on the surface, but I'm literally in the unmanifest and the Sarguna
yes,
Atman and this
manifested.
and the world, apparent all at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. No, I totally understand that. I mean, I live that. I get
Yeah.
it. But their instructions or and I don't think I mean, I'm just holding that energy in the heart
Hmm.
to the best of my ability. And I'm not yeah, anyway. And that's just been fantastic.
Yeah, I would too. One thing, with my upbringing, my parents being Protestant Christian, deep South, and really the blind leading the blind, and that, you know, they in their my family, they don't really understand the teachings.
No,
And, and so as a child, I couldn't believe in it because I couldn't reconcile it in my mind.
sure.
It didn't it didn't make sense to me because to me it was they told me that it was literal, it wasn't any kind of allegorical, or metaphor or anything, that it was all literal. And that, and I would see the hypocrisy, and and I just,
Sure.
in the way that, because my parents, they would go to church, but then when we got home,
A little different.
yeah. So, so, you know, I the God concept thing, wasn't really working for me, and one of the key pivotal moments is when I was in the fourth and fifth step process, and my grand sponsor told me, he's like, well, is your image, or is your concept of God working for you? And I could see the wreckage piled up around me, and I pretty much had to concede that no, it's not.
Yeah.
you know and it was kind of blasphemous to me at the time, but he just told me, well, why don't you shit can that God of yours and get
Yeah.
one that works, a bigger concept of God? And I'm like, how
You
do you
can do
do
that?
that? you know
Evidently.
and so you know so I really had to think about that, and then I did, and then of course when my concept of God was different than the one I was raised with, then I was having to try to deal with the fact that, I was feeling guilty, or like I had to hide my concept of God from my family, and basically I still do. But when I got initiated, I told Sarvadeva, and I was like, look, my parents, they think Catholics are going to hell,
Yeah.
and it's like, you know, so, but if we understand the Sanatana Dharma, so I can worship a picture of Christ just as easy as I can worship a picture of Ramakrishna. So, he said, do what you got to do, so I just, change the names and and do what I got to
I,
do. So
I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this, which is seek the source, is to kind of have these kinds of things come out where it's okay to have your concept.
yeah,
It's okay. I mean, there's a lot. And as this process continues more and more, I think, and people will be more and more, shall we say, comfortable, uh, being willing to take spirituality maybe to the next level.
Yeah,
Uh,
and one thing too, I really couldn't understand Buddhism and Christianity to the level I do now until I learned
right.
Vedanta. And that was kind of like it was kind of like the Rosetta Stone that made them all make sense
Yeah. I mean,
for
to
me.
me, the chair I sit today, they all are correct.
Yeah.
They're all correct. Um, which follow the one that makes sense to you, and eventually it will take you there. Uh,
I think that's why I was more drawn to the Eastern because the concept of Christianity that I was raised with, I
yeah,
couldn't reconcile it. It just didn't I couldn't believe in it. And
yeah,
so, now I have a much different view of
yeah,
Christianity.
yeah,
But still it's the Vedanta that made it all make sense.
yeah. Well, this has been absolutely fantastic. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being willing to
Yeah,
do it.
you're welcome.
I look forward to seeing you at Vedanta. I mean, yeah, it just this is fantastic, and you need, if you would please send me a snapshot.
Okay, yeah.
And the reason is I have to use it as like the thumbnail for the video. I can't, there's probably a way you can do it where I can clip something out of this,
Yeah, I don't
but
know.
I'm
I'm
not
not
that
expert at these
good.
things. I don't even like phones. I don't even carry mine with me usually. People
Yeah,
ask, well, how do you leave the house without your phone? I'm like, easy. I grew up, we
yeah,
didn't, we left the house without our phone.
yeah,
People didn't call you at dinner time.
that's right.
And if you were just gone out of the house, you couldn't be reached.
Well, they didn't even have computers when I was in college, so
Yeah.
um, so if you would, it
Yeah,
would
I'll
help
send you,
me.
I got a couple selfies and stuff on my phone.
Again, there's probably a way you can do it. I don't know how, but I
Yeah,
do
I'm
know
not,
how to use the
it'd be
pictures.
easier just to send you a selfie.
Please. Anyway, thanks much, and
All right.
I look forward to the next time we can talk.
Yep. All right. I'll see you, John. And thanks for
Thank you,
having
sir.
me.
All right. Namaste.
Namaste.
How do I stop this?
I don't know. I'm gonna just hit leave. How about that?
All right. Pause. There we go.
All right.